Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 18 of the anime series Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans. And holy hell, man. Cordelia's words over this news broadcast at the start of this episode literally struck like fire into the heart of the earthly governmental forces, Gjallarhorn, all of that stuff, leaving them scrambling to try to, cease that signal and shut her up once and for all, because she's effectively exposing what has really happened in the Dork colonies, this faux terrorist action and all these excuses Gjallarhorn and these earthly forces have put together, orchestrated to just wreak havoc all throughout those colonies, and as an extension of what originally motivated her, being sort of the face of this revolutionary cause for Mars and all these kinds of things. I mean, it was goosebumps inducing. It is even not lost on Miyazuki. Even he considers how amazing in that moment Cordelia is, and it very much speaks to what I was saying in the last episode discussion video, where the pen in Cordelia's case is truly mightier than the sword. Her words struck more accurately and more fiercely than any of the Gjallarhorn weapons could ever hope to. And the fact that she's being seen by so many and being so influential and having now found her footing. But I like that there's also the contrast, as Atra puts forth. She's noticed on a more compassionate, concerned level that Cordelia's legs were shaking. She was like very much feeling the weight of being on the spot and just terrified. And she's very much mulling over throughout the course of this episode that weight she's now put on her own shoulders. What it's going to mean to be the face of this revolution, to be this Valkyrie at the head, the figurehead of this movement. And the lives that will still, as yet, potentially be taken and lost and, put at risk to try to affect some positive change. And it's quite interesting following on from this, that Mr. Masked guy, somebody I left the door open just in case it didn't turn out to be Fareed McGillis and everything like that. But I thought it was hilarious. It actually cracked me up quite a bit that you have him encountering Cordelia, Orga, Biscuit, and everything in the hallway, and they're like not sure who he is at first. He's representing the Montag company, and I'm just thinking, Fahrenheit 451, anyone? Some parallels there, if you're familiar with the film or the novel. I digress. But Miyazuki comes walking in, and he immediately picks up on this, hey, is this Chocolate Man? What's he doing here? Like, is it something in the way McGillis carries himself? Is it like something in his physicality? Because to look at him, you don't immediately recognize, I wouldn't think you'd immediately recognize who he is. So Miyazuki's automatically just like, oh, hey, why is he here? Chocolate Man. And the reaction, of course, is like to be taken aback very naturally, because last they encountered this guy, for all they knew, he was an enemy. And so it's that much more compelling to see that he is living up to another thing I touched upon in a previous video, becoming this symbol, wearing this mask, and that he lays it all out on the table. He exposes his cards to Tekkadan and to Cordelia, effectively, what his drive is to take down and or reformat the internal machinations of Gjallarhorn. Bring it back to what it was probably supposed to be in its impetus. Reconfigure, what has turned into this thing that enslaves people and is downtrodden upon them, and, just creating so much hell for the lesser to do, for, basically the well-to-do to sit back on their haunches and live their extravagant lifestyles with their hierarchies and their power and money and all that kind of thing. And, to see him coming to the fore and enlisting Cordelia and Tekkadan's help in this movement, something he can work in tandem with on the outside while he is doing so from the inside. It's just awe-inspiring. It's like somewhat shocking, but at the same time it's awe-inspiring. Like, for him to have so much faith now that Cordelia has found herself and given herself a voice, it's impressed upon him how necessary she is to that equation if he's to have any success. And as he says, their goals now are mutual ones. So it's like, damn, seeing Tekadon and everything reeling from McMurdo and all that stuff, all the dirty dealings that have been going on along those lines. And they suspect, Naze might have had some idea of that. I think it was more a suspicion thing. I don't know if he actually knew anything full on. He probably would have said something had he been able to get, back into contact with Orga and Tekadon sooner. But it does seem as though it's like, oh, yeah, okay, that's something I suspected was happening in his reaction to that equation. And so, I mean, it's a proper movement by the end of this episode, and it gets really heartening because Atra's, sort of concern for Cordelia. She's trying to now fill the void Fumitan left behind. And it's a void being felt by everyone. You see one of the kids writing her name out, in sort of the lunch area when all the kids are there. So more than just Cordelia is mourning Fumitan's loss. But Atra's really trying to step up and fill that void and be the shoulder for Cordelia to confide in and lean on. And it's just so endearing. Here is this little girl who she's still rebounding from having been assaulted and abused by people who thought she was Cordelia. And even as she's still healing, she's still got bandages on her face. And she's trying to extend that olive branch to Cordelia. Look, use me, you can fall back on me, you can confide in me, I'm here for you. It's just, she is such an incredible character. She may be diminutive in, size, but she is worldly in how much humanity she has in her. And, it's one of those things where when Mikazuki gets involved too, and Atra's like, hug her, she's crying, she needs someone to support her, It's kind of like, because he's, roughly her size, so it's more befitted for him to hug her. But then, of course, Atra herself is starting to cry, kind of sort of a mixture of sad and happy tears, because she's happy to see someone to be able to embrace Cordelia. She's happy to see Cordelia letting loose of all this stress that she's put on herself now, feeling that weight. And to see this trio is kind of comical as well as endearing, as well as heartening, because you think back to when Atra was like, well, we could both be his wives and everything. But I have to give props to Mikazuki for, whereas he kind of had to be told to embrace Cordelia by Atra, it's his own thought to then bring Atra into that equation, and they share in this cry, a much needed just exposure of what they were feeling internally, and solidifying the bond that exists between them that much more so. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful moment. And I like to contrast with this. Are we calling over to Geilo, Baudouin, and Ein, and through their discussion, are we finding more of the backstory between Ein and Crank? Why is Ein so just obsessed? And Geilo on his part as well, but especially with Ein, why is he so obsessed to go after Tekadon? Why is he taking it so personally? I mean, you get the gist that he looks up to, Crank, who was taken out very early in the series by the Tekadon boys. They're now wielding one of his grazes, as their own. They've made it their own. But apart from that, why is he so seething? What is all that about? And we finally have that exposed in the idea that, because he is half Martian, he is discriminated. There's almost a classism and a racism thing going on in reaction to him. They look down upon him. Whereas Crank was somebody who was able to look beyond all of those social and societal sort of things, and he actually treated Ein as an equal. To have this mentor, father-like role stolen from him, of course he wants to go after the people who did that, who took him from Ein, And it's kind of a similar thing with Baudouin, where it's much more about saving face. He was kind of shown poorly in his being ineffectual in, his previous meetings with Mikazuki in, the Barbados and everything like that. And for him, it's sort of a prideful thing, coming from being that very pompous attitude that goes back to the Seven Stars, that goes back to the earthly very wealthy, sort of familial lifestyle that he hails from. And so here you have these two characters. I feel like out of the both of them, there's a sense of almost, Ian being potentially redeemable if somehow he opens himself. But it's compelling because at the moment, especially as guided by Gailo, who really has that penchant for pride and a chip on his shoulder and wanting to get at Mikazuki and the Barbados, this machine that really, as I said, sent him packing more than once at this point. And he really wants to just show how big bad he is. Well, that is the closest we now have for Ein as a guiding force. And so to see Ein has this level of, you took this role model, this father figure from me, and that's why he has that drive to go after Tekkadan. Maybe if he finds out the truth about how Crank gave in and did not want to kill children, and that's why he gave up and everything, like, it would have to be something more solidified with like video footage or something where Ein could actually be exposed to the literal truth and not just told, where he could say, oh, you're lying, to Mikazuki, if Mikazuki radioed to him, this is what really happened, that kind of thing. Will it go that way? I don't know. It's just a level of the storytelling I would find personally compelling in Ein's characterization thus far, where it's been very spotty and we've gotten little hints here and there, but largely has that question been hanging overhead? Why is he so scathing against Tekkadan and everything like that? What more was there to the relationship dynamic between he and Crank for him to be so motivated against them? And, I like that in a nutshell. We got that very much plain stated in this episode to see what it was about that dynamic that is so fueling for Ein. And it's that much, grander and epic in scale, seeing these two figureheads in, McGillis's masked sort of iconography, planning on taking Gjallarhorn down, reformatting it, taking down the corruption, reformatting it probably closer to what it was in its initial driving force, and doing that internally while now enlisting Cordelia and Tekkadan to do so from without, from the outside. It's just got me pumped up. I really hope they will succeed. And it's one of those things where it's going to be that much more compelling, being that this will wrap up around episode 25, and we will be having a continuation, hopefully later in the year, season 2 later in the year. Hopefully we don't have to wait, till like 2017 or something like that. But I don't know how far along they'd be in animating it and putting it together and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, to finally see this coming to some sense of fruition and seeing the emboldening of the bond between characters like Cordelia, Mikazuki, Atra, and this teamwork for this effort, from the turbines to Tekkadan to now Farid McGillis in this format, in this guise, this moniker he's now wearing. It's just like so freaking awesome. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 18 of Iron-Blooded Orphans. If you've seen it, if you were as taken aback with it and excited by it as I was, and just gangbusters, man, stoked, goosebumps be laid, and all that kind of good stuff. Love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below. So certainly our POVs can disagree. If you didn't happen to be so moved by it, if you didn't happen to find it interesting, I'd be frankly surprised if that was the case for anyone. But you can certainly tell me all about it in the comments below. Just love having that conversation. And so yeah, that'll be pretty much it for me on this one. Can't wait for the next, and I'll catch y'all later. Peace.